So this regular board meeting will be recorded and uploaded to our district website. The definitive documentation and decisions of the board are documented in the meeting minutes. Any use of electronic devices such as a computer or cell phone during the meeting by trustees is related to the business of the meeting. The core values that guide the work of the school district are respect, compassion, honesty, responsibility, and relationships. And we'll call our meeting to order at 5:34 and acknowledge that today's meeting is being held within the traditional territory of the Deneza and Treaty 8. Could I please get a mover and a seconder to adopt the agenda? Moved by David, seconded by Bill. We do have an addition. So number 14 will be an addition of a revised capital bylaw. And then the rest of the agenda would be numbered after that. Calling the motion on that then, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Presentations and delegations? We don't have any. So we'll start with trustee engagement and celebrations, and we'll start with trustee Campbell.
I don't have anything new and different this time.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Gillis.
I was at Central School judging their speech competition last Wednesday. What it?
Okay, thank you.
You were at the AGM.
Trustee Lehman.
AGM. Has it been? Yeah, we haven't seen that. Yeah, I was also at the AGM.
Okay, we'll talk more about that later. All right. Trustee Lehman.
So yes, I was at the AGM. FDA, went to the public budget presentation. Attended Clearview Park with the Pro speech competition last week. And did the Zoom call bargaining update call.
And Trustee Scott Moncrief.
I have nothing new to add.
Okay.
Quiet.
Vice Chair Snow.
Read them going around. I was at the high school. And when I observed a pretty funny pep rally they had going on. And I went to one of the elementary schools for a practice lockdown. Interesting. Down in the ELC for one of the projects they put on down there for their big projects. DFAC, SUPAC meeting, the agenda setting budget talk we had here. I went to a sale they had at Finch. The gym was full of entrepreneurs peddling all kinds of things. Badminton tournament, I went for a bit each day. The year-end band concert, I went there for the board. Stephen pulled me up and I gave Mrs. Gunn some flowers. She's retiring this year, her last band concert. Very nice concert. And then the AGM. Going around.
Thank you. So I participated in interviews for a VP for Prespa 2. And there was a number of you that were also at the IEC meeting. That was part of this window. District Health and Safety Committee, AGM, our deep dive with the Audit Committee and our public budget meeting. Managed to hit the Finch Entrepreneur Fair. And I also got to Explore Fest, which was kind of fun. I went home and bought one of the tools that I saw the kids using for my own crafting at home. So, and I attended the NID Indigenous Learning Day and the labor management meeting and was on a BCPC call. So it's definitely lots going on for lots of people, and May and June are heating up. I did want to acknowledge that as a district, we made a decision. Stephen reached out to me. It was a school district decision to lower the flags to show respect to the victims of the tragedy at the Lapu Lapu Block Party. The shock from that event resonated throughout the province, and we recognize that the tragedy impacted many within the Filipino community, including some of our own staff. Just wanted to acknowledge that here. All right. Moving on then to the minutes of a regular board meeting of April the 14th, which is pages 6 through 13 in your package. Can we get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Bill, seconded by Madeline. Are there any errors or omissions? Calling the question then, all in favor? Right.
Just
Is, sorry,
Sorry, just so you guys know, we were talking about, we're gonna hear about our visit at North Peace. And I was there the other day and there's a growth in their plants there that they showed us.
Oh, yeah, it's working out.
Yeah, it's working.
all right. Moving on then to business arising from the minutes. And you'll notice when we get a little bit later in, that, we've got dates and things for the financial standing committee presentation. And we did put it under 3 different headings. We put in northern factors, K-12 and childcare as 3 headings. And we can bring forward 3 different recommendations. So under the northern factors, when I looked at our previous finance standing committee presentations, we've talked about transportation and tried to build an understanding of the transportation costs in the north. So I've asked Angela to get us some figures on that would go under northern factors. And K-12, it's recruitment and retention that we would hit under there and ask for incentives and everything else to continue. But if there's other things that you think are really important that fit under those 3 headings, we need to know what those are. And then what I'll do is send a draft of what I'm going to talk about out to you ahead of time. The meeting is at the Pomeroy, and anybody's welcome to come in and watch. The format will be 5 minutes for presentation, 5 minutes for questions. South Peace is on behind us, so Chad's already kind of reached out and said, what are you going to say? I want to hear what you're going to say. And I thought, probably the same thing you're going to say, but it's important that they hear it more than once to have it make the grade. So thoughts under those 3 headings from you guys.
Well, I thought when we did the budget deep dive, that childcare is a very important piece. even just, and I'm thinking even when there's obviously meeting with Minister Bear.
Yeah.
That would be an important one there as well.
Yeah. Obviously, with Minister Bear, we'll bring up some of the same things, but our meeting with Minister Bear, which we have an opportunity to talk about a little bit later, it's an expanded agenda and we get to make some choices about our format, what we want to present and how we want to present. It's not scripted from her. We get to kind of set the script for that a little bit, other than they kind of want three things and they want a chance ahead of time, but childcare definitely needs to go in both places.
So for the standing committee, you mentioned the two things you're gonna talk about, but what's the topic for the childcare? Just
For the childcare, it's funding and a clarity around who we're answering to on what things, because right now there's pieces of the childcare portfolio that we answer to the Ministry of Education on, but our licensing, for example, is done through the healthcare, and the rates for the CCFI are set through MCFD. So there's all these different pieces. So really, I guess what I want is I want clarity about what is actually expected of us, because we couldn't take on the inspection factor, for example. But we need to clarify who's doing what and the roles. Because if you look at some of the stuff in Tracy LaRiviere's report to us, they're doing a lot of outreach with the rest of the community and doing assessment with the community and things like that. And I think that's really important work. But is it our role, or is it another ministry's role? Just tell us what it is you're actually expecting us to do. Then we can be very honest in asking about what we need in terms of staff support.
So I've never been to one. So when you ask that question, do you expect to get an answer in the 5-minute answer period, or will you expect to get a
No,
written?
what we end up doing is we present this stuff, they listen all over the province, and then they use the information that they've heard to set budget priorities. So I think one of our key messages the last time we presented was around exactly the kind of clarity we're still asking for. And remember, there was no finance standing committee presentation last year because we were moving into an election year, an election cycle. So when I looked at our old stuff, the request is still the same. And we're not in difficulty because they extended all of that money underneath that integration project for us for another year. But if they don't extend that, we've got $175,000 shortfall at this point in time for the staffing that we're running around childcare.
That's just staffing.
Well, and that's just some staffing, because if you go back and you look at what's landed at the Secretary Treasurer's office around applying for the grants initially, the supervising, and then you talk about the grant, the supervising of all the places that we have leases. It's added a huge thing, and it's not that it's not, it's not to say that childcare is not incredibly important, but there's a little bit of an element of, as Sean was saying from learning, building the airplane in the sky as you're flying it, and we've been flying it for a bit. Now, let's get some of this stuff concrete so we can plan, because if you're sitting in one of those positions that, where's the district going to pay for it for the next year? You might be going, should I be doing something else? Is it going to turn over? And then what we talked about a little bit at the deep dive is the fact that we have created, through our involvement with childcare, a community expectation around what we're offering in terms of some of the just before school programs and some of the preschool programs. And if we don't have the funding to run the staffing, then we're going to be cutting. And basically, it will be being very clear in communicating about why we could do it now before, but we can't do it anymore. So those were some of the, was there anything else that we talked about, the other thing that we talked about a little bit was the concept that when we look at, the lease spaces that we have going into childcare and the square footages involved in the current way that we're looking childcare being funding, there's nothing from the ministry that comes that takes care of the costs of things like custodial for those spaces, electrical, wear and tear on equipment. So there's a number of things to kind of get figured out. Otherwise, it's being subsidized from the K-12 envelope of funding. That was part of it. And basically, the recruitment and retention, it would be a continuation of what we've got in place and a follow through on the learning from the pilot projects, because we've got information that's come out now about pilot projects on the practicums. We know that the recruitment and retention incentives are very helpful to us. And we've got the student loan forgiveness that there's going to be a pilot project on. So we want those initiatives to continue. And I'll go back to the workforce plan probably and look to make sure that we're hitting some of the things in there that are important. Any other thoughts related to that presentation? District of Taylor Agreement.
No. So we have reviewed the agreement. I'm not proposing any changes, and we've brought it to the District of Taylor for feedback, and we didn't receive any. So the MOU has expired at this time, so we were just going to send it to them for signature, and we were proposing everything stay the same. Not proposing, just everything will stay the same.
All right, moving on to approval of the excerpts of the in-camera board meeting of March the 10th, which is page 14 in your package. Can I please get mover and a seconder? Moved by Bill, seconded by Madeline. Short and sweet. Any errors or omissions? All in favor? Thank you. Announcements and reminders. We tried to put everything we could think of on there. What might we be missing? If you haven't let Colleen know about whether you will be attending the long service and the retirement dinner with the +1, can you please make sure you let her know? And we'll need to set up a crafting time that works for everybody on that one. Soon we'll want to carpool to Prescott too.
So people can hop in with me.
When is that?
Prescott is the 2nd of June.
Okay, I won't be here.
And neither will I.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Anything else that people want to add? I did send you out the information about the meeting with Minister Bear. A question that we'll have to resolve is they're using Microsoft Teams. So if we opted, when we decide our format and how we want to do that meeting, to do it in the boardroom, I don't know if we can use the Zoom cart or if there's a place within board office that we can do the same kind of thing with her on the screen and the rest of us in the room
Mr. Mayor?
with Teams, because she's sending stuff out by Teams.
Oh, I see, yeah, wouldn't work here, no. And sometimes the best thing is for each individual to log in. Because then they can appear on the screen. How many do you think are gonna be?
Well, it'll be the board and
Yeah.
you and Angela. But what I'm hearing for some of the boards, they've met with the board in their board office.
Yeah.
And it's zoomed in like she's there, but she can watch in the room. But we've never done that with Teams, and Teams is the platform that you will have got your calendar invite and everything.
Yeah.
EDC support teams, can't it? Like,
It can, it's, however, just the whole engagement level and for the minister to see everyone, I think I would still recommend that everybody logs in on the computer. However, if that's what we need to do, we can certainly set that up in there. It's just not as interactive when people are not connected directly.
When is it?
Last day of school.
Yeah, the 26th.
Well, she wouldn't be able to see everyone that clearly, depending
No,
on.
yeah, it makes more sense if we're all in front of our screens and then you see
She
everybody.
sees your whole
Yeah,
picture, but it's however you want to do
if
it.
she's just seeing it like from here, then,
And it won't be in here. This doesn't work here.
Right.
but yeah, when you're just looking at a room, there's different varying of voices and I think it's better if everybody's, even if we all want to be together, but we're all logged in front of our. Is that what we're talking about?
It's true too.
That's what we were talking about. So
Yeah. One way or the other, we
one
will
way or the
support
other
you.
will make it work. Okay. Not seeing any other additions from people, so we'll move on with the superintendent's report.
Thanks, Alan. Number one, human resources summary report. Lots of hiring going on here, Bill. Be happy. Including, see, I got you, including to Helen's point, recent hire at 101 school with the tier 1A incentive. So we got a significant portion of those incentives funds, and we were successful in getting someone to hired up at 101 for the grade 7 to 9. That's a good example. My online report here, so under the board strategic plan of student learning, intellectual development, just a reminder that there's, with our math assessment and practice, there's many different ways that the teachers can approach number sense. In this particular example, and I think a couple of years back, trustees got to do this. You put a number in the middle, and then on the left, you can count up, on the right, you can count down. There's a number line below that. They try and give a real life example. It's just to show again that there are many different ways to approach numeracy to try and make it more like real life for the kids. You heard a presentation from Josh and Nolan last year, the robotics meeting. So they competed and they won. They won the provincials. And so we also thank you, Max, for reporting on this. And they are now going to the national skills competition. We're supporting them and their teacher, Brant Churchill, to go. And so we're excited for them to bear the district flag. Update for trustees and public. This is not new, but these are some smaller tweaks to the BC curriculum effective July 1st. So coming up for September year, some initial wording around specifically around the Holocaust. That was a provincial, if you recall, it was a provincial mandate. The premier came out and said that some of these additions need to be made, and so that's what happened. And so those particular learning standards and language will now be reflected Social Studies 10. And also under PHE 10, you've also heard about CPR. And so now there are some learning standards and language there around CPR in that grade 10 curriculum along with AED. But the learning it's a learning piece, not a certification piece. Big distinction, because it needs to be accessible to all students. Not everyone is able to carry out training. So this is learning about CPR, and wherever possible and with community partners, there may also be opportunities to get certified for those students that want to. And so I have touched base with all the the secondary administrators on both of these issues, and they are fine. They are prepared for it. Some of them already have all the equipment if that's what they're using. And the ARC Foundation is a very supportive resource that connects with schools around the videos and the learning content. So not a whole bunch of pivoting to do before the school year starts on these particular issues, but they are now mandatory. Wanted to show you this quickly. So Bill referred, thank you, Bill. We had the band concert, and Sandra Gunn has been coordinating for many years our band programming. And so her team set it up where the very final piece of the evening involved not only all the band students playing a piece together that Sandra was conducting, it also included the community band. And they often jump into different performances. They practice at the Aries music room there. So there were more people than we have ever jammed onto the stage at the Cultural Center than I've ever seen, right? And so near the end of the piece, all of a sudden, all the students stopped. And with the audience, it was pre-planned that everyone brought a sheet that said, "Thank you, Sandra." And they held that up with the students and the public. So I'm going to show you that right now. But she didn't know that was going to happen. And so all the students in the crowd and many of these students in the audience came down. And it was the handing of the baton from Sandra Gunn to Sabine Brooks, who was going to be exploring. So that was very exciting. And thanks to this board, I made it really clear, Bill will recall that it's thanks to this board that we have a band program. And many districts don't. And many districts are in the process of contemplating cuts and things like that to the band program. And so the message is really clear that this is a big part of SD60. So once again, I want to thank you for that. Moving on, and also around, this is under Human and Social Development. Just wanted to point out some resources that came through my email for any families going through separation. And so there's a link there, familieschange.ca. And as you know, we often share some of this information with SUPAC and with our parents if they want to avail themselves of those resources. Trustees are also aware of the Future Ready Parent Information Night at the Northern Lights College. So that's Thursday. Well, that's in 2 days. And so that'll be exciting for parents to learn more about dual credit. And you and others often face questions about dual credit. So it's nice that they've organized a meeting up there with featured guest superstar, Denny Morrison. There you go. Our chair alluded to Explore Fest, so I was down there as well too. And so there's a write-up here. It's every year more industries get added. I mean, there's a virtual welding machine. And the police and the medical, the ambulance that were there, they were overwhelmed with the interest. I mean, it was interesting to see a bit of behavior management going on because kids were certainly having fun in the police vehicles there. Okay, so that gets bigger every year. And, you know, when we talk about career transitions, often people forget that that's starting in elementary. And sometimes even in primary. And I talked to one student from Elwyn Holland who said, you know, I'm going to be an EMT. She already knew, she had been to Explore Fest the previous year. She's on a path wanting to become an ambulance attendant, which is fantastic. I wanted to include this time also just celebrating our students, even though it's the East River North Performing Arts Festival, many of our students are going on to compete provincially. It's a big part of our community and region here participating in this festival. So there's some specific names and the schools that they come from, in case you get a chance to connect with them. Around people development with our staff, really grateful for the Poppy connection and the courses that they're offering through for our staff, not just teachers. This often involves all of our stakeholder staff groups. Helen, Bill, we're at the Indigenous Learning Day. Joe Corona joined us virtually, and then we had Maddie who presented in the afternoon. Wonderful to see so many staff in the same room. Big thank you to our Indigenous Ed department, but also it's the organizing committee that involved all the stakeholders, NPAA, PRNTA, exempt everyone. And it was a good day by all. Also under Truth and Reconciliation, just acknowledging it already happened, but several of our staff were at the Reawakening Our Language conference that was even bigger than it was in its first year. So that was exciting. As always, somebody mentioned the entrepreneurship fair at CM Finch, and so I wasn't able to attend, so it's great to hear that some trustees were there. So that's always fun each year to take your money and get some gifts. Let's Talk Science was live at Alwyn Holland School. That's a fantastic organization that's been involved with our district for years. And finally, celebrations around the important message and the historical piece around the red dress. And Mom Marie was celebrating that and acknowledging, remembering. That is my online report. And then following that, there's an information piece around a dental health pilot, and there's some information there, and I'm happy to take some questions on that, but we're quite excited about what that will mean for the Taylor and 101 school communities. And then if I could ask for items 3, 4, and 5 to be broken out for separate motions. That's my report.
Thank you. So we'll go through the big electronic report first. If I could get a mover and seconder. Moved by Bill, seconded by David. We'll go through any, even acknowledge that incentives were used in the hiring of a teacher already. Are there any other questions related to the HR resources summary report?
Yes, you referred to 101, get a teacher there. Any success getting, because all 3 were leaving, weren't they?
Good news, at least today, the teaching are returning. And so actually we have a full complement. So 3 of the 4 are staying. And it was the one from the middle school who moved on, and that's the new teacher we were able to hire through incentives. And upper half of it is fully staffed. What?
And view?
And Buick, it's an LOP situation, so we always have to wait until that's confirmed, but we have a really concrete plan with local LOPs who are doing a terrific job for us out there.
Clearview is
There. You asked me about 101. Okay,
All right, moving through your electronic report. Any questions there? Was exciting.
you remember when they present hearing?
Yeah. I have to confess, I had to look up Hogan's Alley. As a former social studies teacher, I had no idea about Hogan's Alley. Now, the cardio, you sort of hit some of it with the automated external defibrillator, because we heard at AGM motions passed about wanting one in every school. So we already, that's not gonna be an additional cost because we've already got stuff that people are using.
Yeah, there's 2 streams to that question.
Okay.
For the students, it's just about learning what is an AED. Here's what it does, and if you come across one, here's what you do. The second part to your question, which I've not addressed here, is any potential kind of requirements or maybe more on the staff side of things around how many should be in, who's paying for the batteries. I believe those are still valid questions that are out there.
And for a teacher to work with the students on those devices, do they have to have any kind of certification themselves?
No, and in fact, the whole approach here was to not make it so difficult that it would require all those other resources and certification. And so we stuck with the kind of learning piece. However, though, Helen, obviously, we'd want to see what opportunities for a bit of a deeper certification, even around AEDs, are possible.
I just want to say something about the band,
Mm-hmm.
that I heard, Bill, you did an excellent job. And thank you for doing that. And, the kids, when they went to Edmonton, they were talking to different people and they really didn't realize what a privilege it was for them to have the band here in School District 6. And I know 4 or 5 of them came up to me and said, you know, we didn't realize that every school didn't have it. So that's good for them to know. And it's also really good to know that they're off to Niagara Falls this year.
Very good.
They've been invited to Niagara Falls,
Okay.
the basketball competition. Yeah. When they were at the Art Fest and did the presentation, the guy told them that everybody was going to take them out for ice cream. So at Dairy Queen, there was a big lineup, and the people talking there, even the parents, they didn't realize that it was such a privilege to have a band program here. So that was good.
It's good
for
they
them to know.
realized
Yeah,
that.
it's good for them to realize.
Right.
All the more important to keep the funding coming. Yeah, the kids were excited about this. If you see some really very fancy flip flops around town, chances are a student at Explorer Fest thought to create their own flip flops.
It's pretty fun.
Right? So calling the question on that aspect of Stephen's report, all in favor? Moving on, we have before you, Stephen spoke already to the dental health pilot with UBC. And will bring back some of the ethics pieces for us so that we can understand what's happening at a later point when those pieces come to him. School charges.
And sorry to interrupt, but I'm happy to take any questions based on the preliminary information there. You'll recall, trustees, that time ago, that I didn't realize until we started meeting about this, that she used to be a dental hygienist. And that's why she was trying to reach out on this, but it's quite an exciting partnership with UBC, and they've only ever tried it once before a couple of years ago. And so it's with the UBC dental research team. These are the people who actually perform oral surgeries as well as teach professors. And they want to partner. And so Taylor School and 101 fit the bill well, because it would be, I think, grades maybe 1 to 6 or 2 to 6. And that's the right amount of students, because they have all the supplies and the programming to support this financially, as well as with training. And the idea is to train grade 6 students along with the grade 5 student to be a team to help teach in small, 15-minute segments, important dental health to kids.
There's still an adult,
Yes,
and then they just use the kids as.
that's right. The kids are the teachers, but always under adult supervision. They found that, coming from the students and having a grade 6 and a grade 5 means there's some continuity the following year if they're able to offer it.
And Prespa 2 is already aware of that
Of,
program. Like, sometimes it's funny where you can get pushback and where you don't.
oh, I see. Great question. Thanks for asking. But because they could only handle, I think it was maybe a total of around 120 students or something in those cohorts. Those were really the 2 schools that led themselves to be able to make it happen. Yeah. So it wasn't offered to Prespa 2. It's too big at this point. Sorry. So it's 101 and Taylor.
Oh, 101.
Not, it's 101, not Prespa 2.
Any other questions? All right, could I please have someone make the motion that the Board of Education, we don't have to do that. We're on to school charges now. So you did in your package have information on school charges, so could I please have someone make the motion that the Board of Education approve the school charges for 2026 as presented?
Can we ask them questions?
Yeah, we'll do the moving and seconding and then move into questions. Okay, so moved by Bill, seconded by Madeline. Moving forward with questions. Questions?
there are some. Like just in general for format wise, they have some that, well, I'll give you I'm just putting it up here. The breakdown, let's say for shop.
Which school?
Clearview, I'm just using the two as an example. Clearview had an amount and I think Presbyterian just vary it. Which I mean. Fine with either or. I'm just wondering, is there, is it up to each administrator to decide how they wanna put it into these charges?
Yeah.
And do they feel that it's quite often now you see the optional, parents can choose to either pay the fee and then get the supplies or bring their own? Is that problematic? Cause I've also been at enough PAC meetings to hear that these fees can actually accumulate to quite a bit of dollars that they're not recovering. I mean,
Great question.
and so then you have these two things, well, either it's optional, it's not, whatever. But then if a parent chooses the optional but does not supply the kid with supplies, obviously they're still gonna get supplies.
Yeah.
Is it at one point?
Well, that's one of the reasons that some of the schools, you notice, are only focusing on doing supplies, maybe for grade 1 to 3.
Yeah.
Or if you look at Duncan Cran, they're not doing supplies anymore.
So it really varies school by school, and of course, you're talking specifically about school supplies as opposed to some of these other charges, but, and so, each school community is so different. Staff always prefer that there is the consistency of, prepaying so that all the supplies are the same for everyone. But to your point, that can be a problem around accumulating deficits of fees. At least for a little while, schools have been able to offset some of that with the Student Family and Affordability Fund, for example, so that's been helping. But it's for the last, every year, it's always a question for a school, which direction do we go? And we leave that decision up to them. No child goes without school supplies, to be clear, when needed.
Any other questions around school charges? Right, calling the question then, all in favor? Thank you. Moving on to out-of-district field trips. For people that are traveling. And I please have someone make the motion that the Board of Education approve the attached out-of-district field trips as presented, moved by David, seconded by Bill. Questions related to those field trips?
Curious, I think it was Amber's.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was going to.
Cameron was booked.
Oh.
Yeah. And thank you for the question. That's an important one, not to cut it short. And why would a school go to Camp Sagatawa when the school district camp? Because it's really getting booked up well, and it was not available. Yeah.
Good thing.
I'm glad you asked it.
Well, and sometimes people have chosen Sagatawa depending on how many volunteers and things they can get too, because Sagatawa will have staff there to run a lot of things too.
Yeah, we've prioritized those staff-wise as far as Camp Cameron's your first choice, especially when we're supporting them with the cost of transportation and things like that.
Any other questions related to out-of-district field trips? Let's see, go and watch the canoe trip down the river. Okay, calling the question, all in favor? Right. Moving on to, can I please have someone make the motion that the Board of Education approve the attached community coach as presented? It's for a single coach. I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Ida, seconded by Nicole. Any questions related to that request? Right, calling the question then, all in favor? Okay. Thank you. Moving on then to the secretary treasurer's report.
Thank you, Helen. So for my report, I have the finance update to April 30th, 2025, and the HR support staff summary report for the period April 11th to May 15th. That is my report.
Please have a mover and seconder for Angela's report, moved by Ida, seconded by David. Questions? We'll start with the finance update.
I do apologize because in the printout, there's no percentage in the expected column. It's all zero. So I'll resubmit that. I'm not too sure why. My spreadsheet is fine, but zeros are everywhere. So
By the educational assistants, can you remind me what an LSM is?
learning support model.
Okay, thank you. I can't remember what that is. Thank you.
So we are coming in, so we are a bit lower than expected there for expenditures at this point, but let's see what
Okay.
well, we're not overspent on anything except for, well, actually, we're underspent on anything, just some of the substitutes are lower than expected as well. At this point, but,
There's a red number there.
no, it's not right. Well, it's red in the amended,
In a good direction.
yeah, and so we are, coming in over more revenue than expenses, and then I verified last year at this time, we were in pretty much the same position, so. These are the spending, May and June are definitely the big spending times, we save the budgets till then, but in case there's any surprises through the year.
All right. Any further questions related to that?
With the human resources, everything's still good with your facilities person coming?
Yes. June 2nd.
Calling the question then on the secretary treasurer's report, all in favor?
Thank you.
Carried. All right. Looking now at reports of the regular committee of the whole meeting of May the 5th, which is pages 17 to 18 in your package. Motion to adopt the calendar for next year.
We do.
It's 9.2A.
Just.
Yeah, you betcha.
Great. Right. Could I please have a mover and seconder for that report of the regular committee of the whole meeting of May the 5th? Moved by Madeline, seconded by Ida. Thank you. Are there any errors or omissions on 17 or 18? Page 17. Calling the question then, all in favor? Carried. Looking at item 9.2, business arising from minutes. You have a revised calendar with the changes that were suggested to accommodate various things at last meeting. Can I please have a motion that the board approve the Board of Trustees meeting schedule for 2025, 2026 as presented? Moved by Ida, seconded by David. Any further discussion related to it? On the question then, all in favor? Thank you. It's done. Moving on to policy committee. There's attachments in your agenda package. The first one is policy 8005, purchasing protocols for technology. Could I please have a mover that the Board of Education issue a notice of motion for the adoption of policy 8005, purchasing procedures protocol for technology? Moved by Madeline. And that will go out for notice of motion. Looking now at policy 5009, laser pointers. And it's for notice of motion. So Nicole's made the notice of motion that the Board of Education issue that notice of motion for adoption of policy 5009, laser pointers. And then within item number C is some proposed policy committee meeting dates for 2025, 2026. There are 1, 2, 3, 4 dates there. That is coming into the last year of our mandate. Is 4 dates enough to do it? I don't know. It's what are people feeling? Do we need more or less policy committee dates? We can add, but it's what are people feeling?
I think it's an ongoing work regardless. Like regardless whether we have this 4-year turnaround or not, it is ongoing. I think it's a good start.
I agree. I think that the policy committee should just keep going because we always have new policies and different ones to discuss. So it's good to have a, a regular policy.
These dates are committee of the whole dates,
Yeah.
and it's before the committee of the whole?
Yeah.
Okay, but at the key, we did it during the committee of the whole.
No,
It's always on the same days, the committee of whole meeting.
And we start with.
I just feel like I was when we were at the key, we were hashing them out.
Yeah,
that's because when we visit schools, we do a tour first and then we go into our meetings.
Okay, so the policy committee isn't happening separate from the committee of the whole meeting.
It is.
It's not open to the public.
Yeah.
It's in the discussion topics period, just
Right.
prior to
It's
the
to
public
make-
portion.
Because trustees are already getting together that days, rather than trying to find another day.
Right, I remember we used to just, a few people would come to the policy committee and it would be here.
But
But it was always before the committee of the whole.
But it's always been before the committee of the whole, like,
Yeah.
Yeah. But now we're doing it, all of us at the committee of the whole.
well, if I
Do you know what I
may,
mean?
yeah.
it's, when we have our committee of the whole at the board office, then because we're not touring the schools, sometimes you wouldn't have been present or someone would have been present until the committee of the whole. But because we're going to schools, we do our tour first and then between the regular meeting and we have our
We did
policy.
that for a couple of years.
Is that correct?
Yep.
But we were always kind
So
of.
we've always had it before, committee of the whole.
Everyone's always invited.
And I guess my question,
Yeah, I knew we were always welcome, but now we're always there because we're at the committee of the whole.
my question was, is 4 enough? That's was the basic question. And I mean, we can start with what we have here, but if there's something that as we work and we think that there's more urgency, we can follow through with the format of adding some to other committee of the whole meetings. Okay. Thanks. Moving on to you can see that we placed the Indigenous Educational Council IEC updates there. After our meeting with the FSC, the message came back that I think that they will look for trustee representation at those IEC meetings. There has previously been trustee present representatives at, like, for the example, the equity scan, and sometimes for the Indigenous education meetings, it's kind of been hit and miss, but I think we'll see that formalized a little bit. One of the questions, and I had a few questions after that Indigenous Education Council meeting, and one of them was, what's the cycle? How many times a year do they meet? And Stephen had some answers to some of these questions.
Yeah, it ranges between 4 and 5 meetings a year, so it's not on the same rhythm of a monthly board meeting, for example. And, thanks for putting it in there. That's in response also directly to Bill 40, which is that boards are expected to have an agenda item on there. And it's as much for sharing information back and forth as anything. And so I can predict that there wouldn't necessarily be an update every board meeting, but they would always be invited, and it might be every couple of months that you get some information, and vice versa.
Or if somebody from the Indigenous Education Council wasn't at the meeting, but your trustee representative was there,
We can speak to
that's
it.
a place to come back and to report out on it. So that's what's kind of going on, and we'll continue to work. There was a couple of other things that were mentioned at that meeting, was the concept of the cultural competency document and where they're at with that. And I think that will be a really important document when it's developed and shared with staff, that it also comes back to the board, because it becomes part of a conversation we may have with staff. It also becomes advocacy for us to have a clear picture of what our Indigenous Education Council thinks is important in the development of that cultural competency.
And I have an update on that too. So I've invited them to come, like a Pro D session, to come and go through that, because they've not actually finalized their final draft on that. For the trustees' information, the cultural competency document is about how to support mostly teachers in terms of how do they approach learning outcomes with kids around Indigenous content, and to give them some confidence in how to plan for and deliver that instruction. And so they'll be bringing that back to the trustees here in the fall.
And then the other ask was that when their terms of reference, which they're apparently working on, are finalized, if we can get a
Yes.
copy of the terms of
Absolutely.
reference. So any other asks or thoughts related to the Indigenous Education Council meeting that a lot of us were able to attend? As Bill suggested, that was very much appreciated on the part of the Indigenous Education Council, that there was lots of us there.
Arlene approached me at the band concert, and what I said that they've had a discussion and said that we are welcome, kind of thing, and they would like to get us involved.
So that will be there. BCSTA, Trustee Gillis, was there anything from Provincial Council? No. All right, BCSTA AGM report out. You'll notice that in the agenda package, we've attached the motions. Our motion related to the workforce plan, and the other motions from the NIB, the one related to LOPs and an examination of the board of directors structure. So other thoughts, other comments on AGM? We had 4 of us attended. Any other thoughts or comments related to the motions or the sessions? The 4 learning sessions for trustees were communities and community engagement, Indigenous education, student success, data and evidence, and then there was the business portion of the meeting. I thought that they said that they would be releasing all of those PowerPoints and slideshows that were part of the presentations that we attended. But I went and looked and they're still not up and they're still not out. I know that there was some pieces from a couple of them that I would have liked to get my hands on. The one that talked a lot about hope. There was a few things in there that I didn't manage to capture.
Was that Okanagan's Gaha?
Yeah, it was Okanagan Skaha.
I liked when Chad asked the question about how many people knew what an LOP was. Because I can remember, a few years back now, but I think we were at the Hyatt. Or not the Hyatt, was it Hyatt, the other hotel?
Bayshore? No.
The one we used to go to.
Yeah, the Hyatt.
Yeah, you got it right. The one we used to go to?
Yeah.
And, 5 or 6 years ago probably, and so we had to explain to a couple of tables what LP was. And the amount of people there that knew what it was a big difference.
We all know now.
At least, okay, when we used to talk about it, it was just, just you guys kind of thing. But now it's like really receptive. And even like we said, a lot of the stuff we're talking about the north now, we're not getting shoved away. It's really nice. It's the whole province is kind of speaking up for everybody.
I didn't go back to my notes. I know I wrote quite a few from the keynote, which was communicate, educate, and engage. Any takeaways for other people on that keynote? She had some energy to her.
I really appreciate her. That was actually one of my favorites. And I thought her point that she made about you have to keep the message consistent and the same, because that is what builds confidence.
Yeah.
And I thought that is a very good point, because when we see the news nowadays and it goes back, that is how you erode confidence. And I thought that was a interesting, just kind of a backgrounder and the engage part to make it relevant, and then the educate and the engage to reach the people who are not paying attention, because we can engage people who are already engaged. That's easy, right? But to reach the ones that
Those other people.
are not paying attention, it's the parents that do not come to PAC meetings that.
It was nice that a couple of talks we went to, I'd be sitting there going, yes, we do this already. REA does this already, kind of thing. The one that stuck out was the First Nations talk they gave. They were talking about different things, and it was all like, yep, we do this, we do this. Okay, so we're definitely going ahead of some, but it sounds good.
All right. Well, maybe if they actually circulate some of the PowerPoints and talks, there'll be some other points we want to bring back, but they're certainly not on the site at this point in time on the portal. So, all right. Moving on, the next thing in your agenda package is a follow-up to the meeting that I had with Bo and Ma for board chairs on the role of the Ministry of Infrastructure. And I attached to it notes I took and then the actual PowerPoint that she showed. And the concept was this was all very well orchestrated, because this meeting with board chairs happened on the day in the legislature when Bill 15 was introduced and talked about and made public. And they met with board chairs on exactly the same day and went through what was going on in that act and what it meant for us. So if there's any questions, I can attempt to answer them, but
So do we feel that that is truly gonna give us more, we are seeing classrooms out at the Kearney. It just, when I went through the slides, I thought, oh, that sounds like an election platform, but or reads like one. Are we gonna see any?
well, one of the things that explore of having putting an order in for 150 modulars and trying to do some group purchasing of things like that, rather than having every district reinvent the wheel, was something that I thought, well, if it works. Part of the problem right now with modular construction is in some of the other meetings, it's only for classrooms right now. And we need gym space at our middle schools. We need gym space at 101. So will they get into other kinds of modulars? But they didn't really talk about that. There were board chairs, like in the slides, they've got some examples of people that have had roadblocks in terms of, and delays in their building. And there were a few board chairs that kind of spoke a little bit that have been impacted by unnecessarily delays. And they're really hoping that this would speed some of those processes up. I mean, how long did it take us to get an occupancy permit for Upper Halfway? That kind of stuff, they are hoping they can expedite. So,
Yeah, that's what they spoke to. And then instead of each government, department, like, medical, school districts. I know there's other ones, but instead of each one having its own kind of mandate, now it will just be all public sector groups will be governed under this infrastructure. So there's things that each of them will learn from each other. And, one of the things I liked was the expediting of the permitting. That if they can somehow manage to streamline the permitting, which is done kind of through regions and municipalities, that's gonna be, even that one piece will be a win, so.
yeah, so, what I did in my notes was referred you to different slides on what was going on, so. It's there, it's a new ministry, we get to deal with them, which is exciting. All right, BCPC, item number 11.2, Valerie.
Just a real quick, not even a summary, but the point that we were driven home right at the beginning of the call, so this is learning, is that we are the employer. I've actually had people coming up to me trying to see if, kind of represent a teacher or something. It's like, wait, no, we're actually on the other, so kind of looked like I was like the dark side, but anyway. So we are the employer and we should not be, as a board, we're a board, so the bargaining happens at the bargaining table and not in the grocery stores or who knows where. So leave it up to the people that do bargain. I mean, there will be updates as to where we're at or not, but for example, the local teacher, we get ratified, well, I could do by proxy, but, so they're pretty much all done. The local bargaining tables, so they're now on provincials, Stephen's on the advisory.
And actually on the bargaining team itself as well.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
So that's happening right now. But I think it was definitely a big, just reminder that we'll leave it with the.
Okay. Board Cody, we already had some of that tonight. Good stuff. Moving on to correspondence. And we have a letter from the social justice group of the PRNTA that's there for your information. And a letter from Save Our Northern Seniors as well that is there for your information. Okay.
Just a question about the correspondence. Do we respond to these or we just receive them for correspondence and only respond if we?
We receive them and it would be just like if we had a delegation come forward, it's come forward. We don't necessarily discuss it at that point in time. It will be put down later for discussion if people feel that there are things that we need to discuss and we need to talk about. We can send something that says, thank you for your correspondence, to acknowledge receipt of it, but we don't make a decision about the correspondence that's brought forward during the first meeting that it's brought forward. Does that answer your question?
Yes, this one from the PRNTA.
Yeah.
it's just if we never answer them, do they say, oh, well, and then we don't show up at this next year's event like they're suggesting we didn't before? Do they then say, like, I'm just wondering, how do we get this up for discussion?
Part of your next meeting.
If I ask it to be, or it just will be? Oh, on in camera. Gotcha.
Or both. But basically, what I'm reviewing there is the process that we would follow for anything. Something, there may be a letter that comes up and, for example, that tells us we're doing a wonderful job of something. So we don't have to respond to it, right? But if there's something that there is the need to generate a response to, then at the next opportunity, we discuss what that response would be.
But we generally write, and say that we've seen the correspondence.
Yes.
Thank you for your correspondence,
Yes.
because I think that was part of the
Yeah,
question.
that's the answer to your question, is we're receiving it officially. That's it.
Yeah.
Right, and think we have any unfinished business. We are now to the stage where we're going to address some good news, but at the same time, it means that we get to do something again. So you will recall at the last meeting that we passed, our capital bylaw. And tonight, because they have, since we passed that at the last meeting, sent a letter that says you get to have another bus, we have to do a new capital bylaw with 3 readings of said capital bylaw tonight. So,
Well, for a good reason.
Yeah.
so the first thing that I'm looking for is that in accordance with section 68(4) of the School Act, all 3 readings of the capital bylaw number 2526, CPS SD 60-02 now be given at this meeting. So could I get a mover and a second? Moved by Ida, seconded by David, calling the question, all in favor? All right. I am about to do the first reading. The first reading will be done in long form, and then we'll ask for a motion for short form for reading 2 and 3. So this is capital bylaw number 2526, CPS D 60-02, capital plan 2025-2026. Whereas in accordance with section 142 of the School Act, the Board of Education of School District number 60, Peace River North, hereinafter called the board, has submitted a capital plan to the Minister of Education hereinafter it called the Minister, and the Minister has approved the capital plan or has approved a capital plan with modifications. Now therefore, in accordance with section 143 of the School Act, the board has prepared this capital bylaw and agrees to do the following. Authorize the Secretary Treasurer to execute a capital project funding agreement related to the capital projects contemplated by the capital plan or the capital plan with modifications. Upon ministerial approval to proceed, commence the capital projects and proceed diligently and use its best efforts to complete each capital project substantially as directed by the minister. Observe and comply with any order, regulation, or policy of the minister as may be applicable to the board or the capital projects, and maintain proper books of account and other information and documents with respect to the affairs of the capital projects as may be prescribed by the minister. Now therefore, the board enacts as follows the capital bylaw of the board for the 25-2026 capital plan as approved by the minister to include the supported capital projects specified in the letter addressed to the Secretary, Treasurer, and Superintendent dated May the 15th. So that was when the new letter came, is hereby adopted. This capital bylaw may be cited as School District number 60, Peace River North, capital bylaw number 2526, CPSD 60-02. Can I get a mover and seconder for that first reading? Moved by Bill, seconded by Madeline, calling the question, all in favor? Thank you. And now I need a motion that the second and third reading be done in short form. Moved by Bill, seconded by David. All right. All in favor? Thank you. Second reading, we're talking about capital bylaw number 2526 CPSD 60-02. And it is being done in accordance with section 142 of the School Act, and the Board of Education hereinafter calls the board, has submitted the capital plan to the minister, and the minister has approved the capital plan, and we will proceed to have the secretary treasurer execute the project, and we'll be observing and complying with all orders and regulations. Proper accounting will be done. And so we are enacting bylaw 2526 CPSD 60-02. Can I please have a mover and seconder for the second reading? Moved by Ida, seconded by David. Calling question, all in favor? All right, moving on with the third reading again in short form, and we're talking about capital bylaw number 2526 CPSD 60-02. And it is a bylaw that is made with the agreement of the Board of Education and the Minister of Education. It is done in accordance with section 143 of the School Act. It allows the Secretary Treasurer to execute a capital project based on the funding agreement, and we will comply with any order or regulation that the minister has. Proper accounting will be done, and based on that, what is in the May 15th, 2025 letter, we will proceed with the passing of capital bylaw CPSD 60-02. Can I get a mover and seconder on the third reading? Moved by Bill, seconded by David. Calling the question. All in favor? All right. Okay. All right. So I'm turning it over to Angela now as we start to look at our annual budget.
So tonight I will be presenting the preliminary annual budget for 2025-26. We went over, we met as a finance committee on May 14th. There was 4 trustees present, so there was 4 for that meeting. Tonight, I am asking for 2 readings, pending any additional questions and a review from the Ministry of Education, which is always good to have before we submit our final budget and they find something in it that this isn't in the right spot or the next spot, even though I've looked at it so many times, I do have it memorized. So, again, just a reminder that this budget is based on the enrollment projections that we submitted in February of 2025. So our agenda for the slideshow as well as the results. Okay. And please feel free to ask questions as we move along. So All ministry, funding is based on FTE. I've just put the amended budget there, just for comparison reasons. So we have something to compare it to. We are looking at a decrease of school age enrollment, of 29.563 FTE. That is based on brick and mortar schools as well as the online, component. We've, for the 2025-26 year, we've projected a bit more in line to what we've seen, in previous years for the online. So we, for the amended budget, we had to add some substantial numbers, for funding that we hopefully, if we projected well, and still a little more conservatively because we're having that change, in staffing at the key for the WEX program, but everything should still fall into place. So the projections are more in line. If you looked at last year, we would have been quite a bit lower in our projection. So overall, we're 27.938 FTE lower. The adults, just an estimate of what we're going to get. 14 seems to be pretty conservative. And then the other is the cross enrollment that we see over the summer. So that represents 1.25 FTE. Total ministry funding for 25-26 is coming in at 83,357,097. That's strictly enrollment-based funding. That's no additional supplements from the Ministry of Education. So that's up approximately, well, it's up 2.158 million from the 2024-25 budget. The per student funding for brick and mortar schools went up around $100 per student. And I think the online went up each. So those are just comparisons of the different categories we see. You get a nice little summary sheet, just strictly based on enrollment and the unique geographic factors, equity of opportunity settlement. The Indigenous Education Council is on there as well. And I can provide you with more details on those different items here. But that is our base enrollment for the year. And then this operating revenue recognizes the different items we receive as a district. So at the top there, we have Ministry of Education funding. So pay equity is consistent with prior year. Funding for graduated adults, we projected a slight increase. Student Transportation Fund, consistent with prior year. Support staff, FSA, pretty much in line with, well, it's in line. It hasn't changed since I've been here, those pots of money. And then one addition from the previous year's preliminary budget is the Ministry of Education childcare amounts that we receive. Labor settlement funding will come at amended budget time because, as Madeline said earlier, we are in bargaining. So that means as of right now, we have no idea what the increases will be, or if there will be any. Again, the increase for DL and special needs is blank this year because hopefully we've projected well and we won't have to have that line. And then we know that there's recruitment and retention and workforce strategy funding coming, but we can't budget it because we don't know if at this time we know there's uptick, but the ministry, we haven't applied for it, so they won't recognize it on the budget. And then we're continuing with the MCFD, international program, we are putting in for 45 FTE, which translates to about 60 students. That's 60 head count FTE. Some only come for one semester, some come for a full year. And then we have the Alberta students included in there. Miscellaneous income is down from previous year. We just have less, that seems to be a good amount for what we capture every year. This year was a bit of an anomaly because we had some insurance income in there from the Duck and Crown fire that we had to recognize. Childcare, strictly parent payments, is coming in at 496,000. Rentals and leases, that's our different spaces within our buildings that we lease out, as well as teacherages and Cameron Lake. And then we've projected investment income at 360,000, which we can thank our friend Adam for, because I would have even projected even lower, but he was like, no, he's got some sort of crystal ball that he feels confident at 360,000 around. So
Can I ask a question to this slide? Just, because the transportation has remained the same. Is that kind of written in stone, like it's not that they can decide that, oh, you know what, the carbon tax is off, we're gonna reduce that number, or is that
I think that number,
quite solid?
is it 2016 was the last time it saw
Has
the
that
last
changed?
time.
Was 2016 was six, which is actually kind of this,
I'm not, I actually don't know how they determined that amount back then and how it hasn't increased at all.
how it can stay the same for 10 years, I'd like to run my car like that.
But I think where they capture other factors is in that unique geographic factor. So that goes up, but this number,
Has stayed the same for the last, that's since 16, okay.
the last 9 years.
I don't know if this is a you or Stephen question, but it's about this. It's the recruitment intention part. Well, we get recruiting money, but just the way they label that we don't get retention money, right?
No, good point.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Teacher recruit, yeah. That's my bad.
Yeah,
I always lump them together. Recruitment and retention is such,
Yeah, it's just the one end of that, you're right.
it's just
Yeah.
a recruitment.
So the title's a bit misleading.
There's no retention.
Sure.
He's starting to squirm.
I put that in on purpose, Bill. Thank you for paying attention.
When we look at,
That's a good point.
when we look at our international program, have we made any changes to our fees there, or are our fees exactly the same?
He has, he has a document that he brings to site, so it does go up. I think he put it up this year. I can share the document.
Well, it's just a curiosity because
It's a marketing sheet that
it's
he shares with.
curious, and I was curious as to whether we've gone up or down and whatever.
We keep pace a bit around things like inflation. However, he's quite strategic in remaining competitive compared to some of the more urban international programs. So we are a more of a better deal, let's put it that way.
Well, out of COVID, we picked up a lot of people because Nova Scotia wasn't doing this. Didn't know where we were at. Our
Yeah.
needs to keep that attraction going.
Yeah, no,
I don't know.
definitely still.
And I don't know what our prices are exactly compared to others.
Yeah.
But I know when it comes to like, I've talked to other people about like putting people up, like international students to put up. And I know with like Sports Village, I've heard that Burnaby was $1,400 a month they were paying to build it in somebody's house.
Yeah.
Where up here they pay at the most 800.
Yeah.
That's
And remember, there are very few international programs north of.
Yeah.
Oh.
Really?
So we're our own market.
Yeah.
So it's the Goldilocks goal is to find that right mix of fees and make sure we're not only covering costs, but to generate revenue for the district. That's an important aspect of the international program.
I can share the sheet with you. It has the homestay amount on it as well as the revenue or the per student value. The graph depicting, the Ministry of Education and Childcare is 97.55. Of our operating revenue. Everything else is much, everything else is under 1%, the international, and Alberta tuition, the revenue grant, and the child care parent payments. Operating expenses, we are looking at 87,001,391 for 25-26. 80, you can see from the ratios that we have, they stay pretty comparable, little bit of fluctuation, but 80% is where we sit for instruction, and then the rest is spread out through operations and maintenance is our next highest at 11.63%, district administration 3.34, and transportation and housing 5.03. Transportation and housing is just the title of the. Not yet, anyway, till we become the Ministry of Education and Childcare. And by object, again, we can see the majority of the money goes to staffing, which is where it should go, and that's pretty consistent. We're up a couple percent just because we're seeing an increase in benefits due to the inflation is passed along there through the increases to extended health and dental. So we're seeing more, we may be seeing more spending, but we also know that those costs are also increasing. And then there is quite a drop in service supplies. So that would be where you would go to balance your budget, and then trying to see, so the wages, there is a couple of staffing increases that we have for this year. We have 2 literacy coaches for the 2025-26 year. We spoke about the benefits increase, and then we also have to add an addition in one of our schools. So there's some staffing increase there. And then for the supplies, we budgeted, there is a decrease in fuel and utilities due to the lack of carbon tax. So hopefully that stays the course, which is how you have to budget at this point because it's gone. That does help the overall budget with those, especially the utilities. Like we were seeing each bill was like 30% carbon tax.
On the gas, yeah.
Not the same for fuel, but for PNG. Don't look at it now. Don't look at it 2 months ago for sure. Salaries and benefits, the majority of the pie there, 86.35 versus service and supplies at 13.65%. So we do have a balanced budget for 25-26. There is a use of surplus appropriations that supports the numeracy and literacy initiatives. An amount for carry forward to school-based budgets, and then continued support for the learning support model. Schedule 3 is special purpose funds. I put in bold the items that are, I say they're new for next year, but they're new because we've received the funds in 2024-25, but the spending isn't going to start until 25-26. And they are new to, the spending will be new to the district in the new year. So we have estimated revenue of 14.1 million and expense of 14.1.
Student and family affordability fund always carry over. That's not new money coming.
But no, not new money, just carry over. The way it works is that once we spend the money, then we recognize the revenue.
Yeah,
So,
that's fine.
and then we are seeing the continuation of the seamless day kindergarten and just before, so we'll be getting new funding. And what Helen spoke to earlier in the meeting is the early care and learning at 175,000. That's to provide funding for salaries to support the childcare early learning aspect of the district. Budget bylaw, which is statement 2. We are seeing the total expenses coming in at $87,001,391. Operating tangible asset purchases, 478,767,000. Total expenses and capital assets for special purpose funds is 14,145,867. And then the capital fund is coming in at 6,598,956 for a total of the preliminary annual budget bylaw of 108,224,951 for 2025. Just some budget highlights. Addition of 2 literacy coaches in the addition. Increase to benefits, targeted training for the following groups: EAs and resource teachers. There's ongoing training throughout the district, but those are a focus next year. Additional support for speech language in schools, so we're having more programs out to rural schools. More on a support side aspect, and then we don't have the one SLP in our district. Currently budgeting the same as previous year for the counselor time, CERT, librarian, learning assistant teachers. Learning support model funds allocated to schools. Budget includes replenishing of technology. That's the majority of our equipment time, because we need to we have an ongoing cycle for technology replacement, and then recognition of the elimination of the carbon tax in fuel and utility.
So we did get information back about what staff wanted and what you considered in preparing this. What level of public input? We didn't have anybody, there was very limited attendance at our public budget presentation. What information came to you through surveys?
Survey.
There was nothing that came
In the survey. I'll have to bring that back. I had something prepared.
Did you send surveys out too?
It was.
There's a
open to
public link on our website.
And you actually get some,
We get a few.
I did also send it up to SUPAC and to send out to all the packs, but you can post whatever, but.
And
If we got some feedback, we want to somewhere say, thank you for the
Yeah,
feedback
yeah.
that was considered.
I apologize, but it also got boosted on,
Social media.
Well, I don't know how to boost. Jared, boost. Thank you, Nicole. Any questions? But the budget balances and, we're gonna keep serving. Yes, that's surprise to you, Steve.
All right, given that, could I please have a motion that the board adopts the first reading of the annual budget bylaw for 2025-2026? Moved by Madeline, seconded by Bill. All right, annual budget bylaw. A bylaw of the Board of School District Number 60, Peace River North, called the board to adopt the annual budget of the board for the fiscal year 2025-2026 pursuant to section 113 of the School Act, RSBC 1996 C4112, as amended from time to time called the Act. The board has complied with the provisions of the Act, ministerial orders, and Ministry of Education and Child Care policies respecting the annual budget adopted by this bylaw. This bylaw may be cited as School District Number 60 Peace River North Annual Budget Bylaw for the fiscal year 2025-2026. The attached statement 2 showing the estimated revenue and expense for the 2025-2026 fiscal year and the total budget bylaw amount of $108,224,981 for the 2025-2026 fiscal year was prepared in accordance with the Act. Statement 2, 4, and Schedules 2 to 4 are adopted as the annual budget of the board for the fiscal year 2025-2026. It's read a first time on the 20th day of May 2025. Any questions, further discussion? Calling the question then, all in favor? So the first reading has passed. Could I please get a motion that the second reading be done in short form? David and Ida? All in favor? Carried. All right, so reading number 2 of the annual budget bylaw for pursuant to section 113 of the School Act. The board has complied with the provisions of the Act, ministerial orders, and Ministry of Education and Child Care policies. This is our annual budget bylaw. The attached statement 2 shows our estimated revenue and expenses. And we are looking at passing a total budget bylaw amount of $108,224,981 for 2025-26. Schedules 2 to 4 are adopted as our annual budget, read a second time the 20th day of 2025. Right, calling the question then? No, I need a mover that the board adopt the second reading of the annual budget bylaw. Bill, Ida, calling the question now. All in favor? Thank you. Great. Moving on to new business. We don't have anybody with us from the PRNTA, CUPE, or DPAC. It is now that wonderful time of questions from the press and the public.
Thank you. The laser pointers, that stood out to me when going through the agenda today. Were these not allowed before?
We were just updating the policy. They've always been, well, I shouldn't say always, since probably they were invented, they were allowed in school. What we do is we review the policy and see if anything needs to be updated. So, you can see in red what we've changed.
Mhm.
So it's not a new policy. We just made some changes to it.
I see, but, and you do feel like these are just good practical improvements by, updating the law?
Yes.
All right, that's good. And, yeah, just for the capital bylaw, how exactly did the district get another bus?
I got an email on the 15th. They had.
Requested one.
Yeah, Yeah, back in May or in September, we had I think we asked for 6 buses. They originally approved 4, and then they came through and approved 1 more.
All right, great.
Good news story.
Definitely. We always enjoy writing follow-ups. But that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. Could I please get a mover and a seconder to suspend our regular meeting and move into camera? Bill and David? All in favor? Leah, please stop. Could I please have someone make a motion that our in-camera motions are brought forward for implementation, moved by Ida, seconded by David, all in favor? Carried. Now, could I please get a motion to adjourn? Moved by Nicole, seconded by Ida. Leah, please stop the recording.